is this tree was planted last spring at the nursery. Look how big that is. So what they do is they put a lot of nitrogen in that tree and really force it to grow fast. And when they do that, the roots grow fast too. And when the roots grow fast and they hit the side of the pot, they don't stop because they can't go through the pot, they just turn. And once a root turns, it always turns. So if I'm a root and I'm coming out here and I've turned and now I'm a big root here, this tree's growing and the root's growing, what's going to happen to that tree? Eventually that root's going to strangle the tree, right? So we don't want that to happen. So what we want to do is we want to get as much mulch off of that tree as possible. And so we do some pretty brutal things to it. The other thing is that we're trying to see what's underneath, because when they put this tree in a pot, way back when, they put it in that little 1-gallon pot that you just saw, right? And then when it gets bigger, what they call upsize it and put it into a 3 or 5 gallon, and then they eventually go to a 15 gallon. But way back when, this tree could have been hitting the side of that pot right away. And if it does that, so this looks fine, right? Looks really good. Why don't we put it in the ground? Well, we're not going to do that. What happened here was it hit the side of the pot and it turned around and went back, didn't it? Well, that's not going to work, because if those branches or those roots are underneath there, that's not going to be as stable. You want your roots going out, because that's your stability, is going out. Remember I said that we cut off 90% of the roots on most trees. So what we can do here is we can take those roots off. I have to take my glasses off, I can't see. And then these roots that have gone in, they're going to die off. But what's going to happen is we're going to sprout from this here again, and that's going to hang on. We want that stability for the roots to go up. I have planted a bunch of red buds in my yard when I first started this, and one root went 35 feet over to the garden to get some moisture in 1 year. So roots can grow very, very fast, and they can be very resilient. The other thing I'm looking for is the flare. So if you turn around and look at some of the big trees in the garden, you see they've got like a little waist on them. That's the lungs of the tree. You want to get down to the lungs of the tree so that the tree can access oxygen. If you guys are wearing these masks right now, you're feeling like, oh, I'm kind of smothering a little bit, right? Well, just think what a tree feels like when it's got 3 inches of mulch, too much mulch on the top of it. It's smothering. And for every 1 inch of mulch or soil that's on top of that tree above that collar, that reduces the oxygen by 10%. So if there's 3 inches too much mulch up there, that means the tree's getting 30% too little oxygen, which means that tree is not going to make it. Or it's going to be a stubby tree and it's going to be a junky tree. We want to have a healthy tree. So what they do is, you can see on the top of this, they put a lot of what's called osmocote. See these little beads? That's nitrogen. So the tree, being a greedy little pig like it is, it went up to get that osmocote. But it's not good for it because it put all of these sucker roots there. Well, the tree doesn't care at this point because it's getting enough moisture because it's in a pot. And it's getting enough nutrients, but once it gets in the ground, it's not going to be taken care of like that. So I'm still trying to find the collar of this tree. And I'm going to keep digging down till I find it, because that's the most important thing I can do. Turn it around for just a second if you would, so they can see. So you see all these little white roots? Those are the guys you want to have. Those are your feeder roots. Because those are the guys that are going to keep spreading and picking up nutrients and moisture. So you see here, I've got a bunch of stuff that's going on that I haven't even figured out yet, because these guys are all sticking up. And roots can't go up, right? Because they got to stay in the ground. And then as I get closer, I see that there's a little tiny root going round and round the tree. It's no big deal when it's a little tiny root, but when that gets bigger, what's that going to do? It's going to strangle the tree again, right? So this is what we do with every tree that before we put it in the ground. We don't want those roots to be going up to the sky, because it's not going to do that. And so what I do is I just say, well, okay, let's quarter this tree. And some people just take a chainsaw and do that, which can be very dangerous for the tree. But remember that redbud that I planted grew 35 feet in 1 year, the roots. So the roots, if they're able to access moisture, they're going to go for it. And they know where moisture is. It went all the way across my yard to the vegetable garden. Okay, let's turn this around so they can see. And I just found another little tiny girdle right there. Again, we don't want that girdle. Now I'm down to the point where I really need to see what's going on in here. So Carl's going to wash it one more time. Okay, so I finally found the collar like 3 inches below. So you want to turn that so they can see that. So my collar's down here. There's a flare down here. So all this stuff that's still on the top, we don't want it. It's getting pretty small, isn't it? But remember I told you that they cut off 90% of the roots when they do a tree in the nurseries. So it's still got viability, but more importantly, putting the roots up against the native soil is going to allow that tree to access nutrients and moisture much more readily than being trapped in this ball of compost and mulch. And I just got down here, and I want you to turn that so everybody can see. And you can see, way down here, I got a girdle. And once that keeps growing, that's going to strangle that tree, so that's got to go away. Those are the guys I'm trying to make sure are not there. That's the most important thing, is to not have those girdles there. You can see that that's going to have to come off all the way down, all the way around. It's better to be nothing that's going to actually survive than to put this tree into the ground and 5 years later it strangles itself to death. So we just took out a big root that's going this way, so when the tree grew this into it, it would have killed it. You want to cut it here? Right there with the buffer? Right there. So a tree doesn't need much. It needs oxygen, it needs nutrients, and it needs moisture. And if you give it those 3 things, it will grow beautifully. If you don't give it those 3 things, it'll still grow, because trees are tough. And they're going to continue to try to grow as much as they can. But we want to make sure that we start them out when we can. So I'm way back here, and look what I found, another girdle, okay? Not good. So what I can do, let me lay it on its side. So I can go in here, and I can do what I said, we quarter it. We find out what's in here. You can see I'm just taking off a bunch of dead old roots that were accessing that osmocote. Okay, I can stand it up again. Let's try it one more time. And when we get a red bud from the nursery, we go, okay, we got an ugly one. Every time they're going to be this way.
Is that just because the roots grow so quickly?
They grow so quickly. So this guy here is coming from here and he's going all the way across. Not good, right? So we need to take him off of there. And again, once it turns, it always turns, so I'm going back to the turn. And it's stuck in here, so we're just going to gently try to get it out. Because we don't want that to be going across the tree. That's not what roots are supposed to do. Roots know what they're supposed to do, they just can't do it because they're in a plastic pot. That's why it's actually better to plant a smaller tree than a bigger tree. If you plant 2 trees, and one's this high, and one's this high, in 5 years they'll both be the same size. Because it's all about the roots and how we manage those roots. Most important is what's around the collar, what's around down this here.
I think that's good.
And that's what we're going to put in the ground. I'm going to bring the tree over. And we want to make sure, like I said, the collar is above ground. So when we lay this across, that's the soil. So is that too deep or deep enough? Anybody?
I would say slightly higher.
It needs to be slightly higher. Okay, so let's go ahead and pull the tree. Put some more soil back in there.
High now.
You know what? I always want to plant a tree a little high. Okay, so there's your soil level. Might be a little high, but it's not bad. And I'd rather have it a little high than a little low. Because that means it's going to get oxygen, okay? Okay, so you guys will fill that back in. And what we want to do is as you're filling it in, they're going to kind of push with their fingers into that and make sure that we don't leave any air pockets. So I'm going to come around and show them there's all kinds of air pockets that you guys leave if you don't push that down or watering in. So we're going to do both. So we need to cover that root on the other side. Now mulch is good because that's going to retain the moisture around the tree. But we have to be careful not to let that mulch, excuse my backside everybody, we don't want the mulch to touch the tree because that can rot the tree trunk, remember? But we want to keep the rest of the tree moist because you saw those baby roots? As long as it's moist, the baby roots can penetrate the soil. Once the soil dries out, it's like cement. So that's what we've done here. Because most people go to Home Depot and they buy their tree and they stick it in the ground. And it dies 10 years later and everybody goes, what the heck happened? Because trees should live 30, 40, 50, 100 years. There's no reason that they shouldn't do that, but the reason that it doesn't is because we didn't give it a chance in the first place. And then we're going to put a moisture tube on here. First year it sleeps, second year it creeps, and then the third year it leaps. It's setting roots, it's getting itself ready to grow, and what has to happen is the auxins, which is a hormone in the roots, are speaking to the hormones in the branches that are auxins, and they're saying, I need more roots, I need more leaves. And between the two of them, they'll balance out, and this tree will start growing and stay balanced. The feeder roots from this tree are over here. All those fine roots, and they're not any deeper than 12 to 18 inches, because that's where the oxygen is, near the soil surface. If it's really compacted soil, they'll stay at the 2 inches above the soil, because they need oxygen. Everything needs oxygen.